Following the Gulf War of 1991, Saddam Hussein had defied several resolutions of the United Nations Security Council. These violations, in addition to a history of supporting international terrorism, prompted President George W. Bush to order U.S. military action against the regime of Saddam Hussein. Operation Iraqi Freedom began on March 19, 2003, when U.S. forces began an air campaign striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war. In the following days, Army and Marine personnel pushed into Iraq. 3 weeks into the invasion of Iraq, Coalition Forces Land Component Command elements, led by the U.S. Army 3rd Infantry Division, moved into Baghdad. The United States ended its first phase of operations in Operation Iraqi Freedom on April 14, 2003. Many things happened between 2003 and 2006, to include the Coalition Provisional Authority dissolving the old Iraqi army, the graduation of Iraq's first recruits from basic training, training 9 battalions of a 44,000-person strong new Iraqi army, and forming an Iraqi counterterrorism force. In 2004, the Ministry of Interior Forces were established, as was the Department of Border Enforcement, the Federal Police, and the NATO training mission, Iraq. Training at this time was focused on initial and advanced individual skills using on-hand old Soviet-style equipment. In June of 2003, Coalition Forces Land Component Command was replaced by Combined Joint Task Force 7, assuming command and control of more than 136,000 troops from more than 36 countries around the world. CJTF-7 was responsible for organizing, training, and certifying the Iraqi armed forces, establishing a professional force of Iraqi soldiers who could defend their sovereign country. Later that year, U.S. forces captured Saddam Hussein hiding in an underground hold near his hometown of Tikrit. He would soon stand trial for his crimes against the Iraqi people and would later be executed on December 30th, 2006. In January of 2005, Iraq held its first competitive election in 50 years. 58% of eligible voters participated, resulting in a total of 8.5 million people choosing their government freely for the first time. In October, a national vote approved Iraq's new constitution. Elections were held in December of 2005 for a new Iraqi National Assembly. On May 20th of 2006, Iraq's Council of Representatives approved Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki's cabinet, ending the Iraqi transitional government. This gave the Iraqi people their first truly independent government since the fall of Baghdad. With all the leaps in progress, however, violence in the country was at its peak. The situation called for urgent action to help Iraq regain control from those who sought to push the country into chaos. President Bush announced that 20,000 additional U.S. troops would be sent to Iraq to provide additional security for the new Iraqi government. This pushed the U.S. presence to approximately 150,000 troops. The increase of troops in Iraq will be historically known as the Surge. The Surge represented a change in U.S. tactics. We began to employ more effective counterinsurgency techniques, moving back into cities to better protect the Iraqi people. A major operation during the Surge was the Charge of the Knights, the first major operation planned and carried out by Iraqi security forces, signifying the Iraqis were able to take control and stand up against the Iranian-backed militant groups. Over time, the additional forces would eventually help to break the cycle of sectarian violence gripping the country, thus enabling the Iraqi government to draft the Security Agreement of 2008, which required the complete withdrawal of U.S. forces by December 31st, 2011. This recognized the Iraqis' full sovereignty and took coalition forces from operating under a UN mandate to operating under the invitation of the government of Iraq. Between 2007 and 2010, the United States built regional training centers and operations commands. The Iraqi Ground Forces Command assumed control of 10 Iraqi Army divisions. The Iraqi Security Forces assumed responsibility for security in the cities. The first Navy patrol ships arrived, and the Iraqi Army's new Aviation Command fielded a fleet of Mi-17-1E helicopters. Within the Ministry of Interior, from 2007 to 2010, rule of law training began. The Italian Carabinieri graduated their first class of national police, and the Crime Evidence Lab opened at the Baghdad Police Training College, thus enabling the Iraqi rule of law to progress from confession-based justice to evidence-based. Training at this time was focused on decentralized individual to platoon level training using Humvees, crew-served weapons, mortars, and individual protection. As a signal of the U.S.'s diminishing role in Iraq, and in compliance with the newly drafted security agreement, U.S. forces completed the first stage of the planned withdrawal by withdrawing from Iraqi cities on June 30th, 2009. As of September 1st, 2010, U.S. forces in Iraq shifted their focus from combat to stability operations, and as such, served as advisors and trainers for the Iraqi military. U.S. forces helped the Iraqi government ensure the safety and security of their citizens. Thus begins a new era of partnership between the United States and the sovereign nation of Iraq. In 2010, 14 Iraqi army divisions conducted counterinsurgency operations across Iraq, and the Iraqi Special Operation Forces conducted counterterrorism operations. In 2011, the Iraqis began company-level training in 4 of the 14 divisions known as Tadrib al-Shamil, and began force modernization of the Iraqi military. Ministry of Interior Forces assumed responsibility for the security of coastal waters and oil infrastructure throughout the nation. Training in 2012 will focus on combined arms training using modern weapons systems purchased from the United States and collective training programs focused on developing an external defense capability. In accordance with the Security Agreement of 2008, military efforts are transitioning to a State Department-led effort to continue helping Iraq on its path to becoming a sovereign, secure, and stable country. Our efforts to continue working with the Iraqis will not falter and will not waver. We will continue to work with them as we work with all sovereign countries. In the end, this will be good for the Iraqi people, good for the entire region, and good for the United States. The service and sacrifice of the American military and coalition partners have provided Iraqis the opportunity to control their destiny for the first time in many generations. The Iraqi people are at a crossroads. Freedom and democracy are theirs to secure.